Hello, this is an old Model A Steinway grand piano made in 1889. Just come back into stock. It's 185 centimetres long. We fully restored it in 2010 and it's come back in the client's downsizing, so hasn't got room for it. We did originally do one of our oldest videos of this piano when we first repolished it, so I'll put that on as well and put a link to it. But the casework was is French polished, 70 hours work roughly, and as you can see is stunning really. I'm very encouraged by that, the condition is almost identical to when we sold it originally. So we repolished them very similarly today. This is natural rosewood colour, a beautiful music desk, and as you can see, tasteful rosewood veneer. We like a colour that brings out the maximum contrast, so it goes lighter than the original rosewood, and that gives you these nice dark patches and contrast, as I say. Now the one difference between when we sold it and now is that you can see that fade line there, which I'm trying to exaggerate for you, and that fade line I feel has devalued the piano. If you keep the piano open, and this piano is in our window, so we'll keep this open and it will obviously fade in, so that it's been folded back. If you've got a repolished piano, it's important to vary so that you're folded down and folded back sometimes, but mainly down when you're not using the piano. You can see the stunning veneer there as well. So because it's got the fade line, it's much less expensive than it would otherwise be, but if you have it like this for a long time, 10-year period or so, it'll fade in pretty much the same. So that's encouraging if you want to buy it, and it gets more valuable as time goes on. Now the legs are always darker on grand pianos, well nearly always. They're not rosewood, they have to be matched in to look like rosewood. On old Steinway, there's what we call elephant legs. Perhaps not the nicest name, but obviously see why they're called elephant legs. And they have a caster underneath in the middle, so you can't see that caster. It's a style that they used. Richard Litt was another make that did them similar, very high quality piano. Now the leg room is about 60 centimetres, but the pedals are very low. You could put caster cups underneath quite successfully and raise the piano up because the pedals won't be too high. We've often mentioned that before. Ivory key tops, and they're in excellent condition. You can see where we've repaired the odd, there was a slight chip there, and this was our original repair, so there's one or two in the middle, but it's good ivory. If it's been exported, then you might want to change that, and certainly we do that very often. It's getting increasingly more difficult to sell ivory keyed pianos. An important point to remember if you buy an old Model A Steinway is that and other Steinways too, the music stand folds forwards. If you try and fold it backwards, then it breaks at the hinges. I've seen that 2 or 3 times. That's why I'm mentioning it. So it folds forwards and then slides in. Here's a typical Bechstein desk, and most grand pianos they fold backwards like that. So be careful when you fold the Steinway that you don't fold it the wrong way. Now we tried to do this as original as possible. The felt we chose actually a slightly different colour to what you would get on a Steinway of this age, but we had the felt and we just thought it was particularly stunning, so we used that felt. And apart from that, it's all done exactly as it was originally, I think. And my colleagues painted over as Steinway would have had painted over. Sometimes you get restorers that don't paint over as they were originally, so we prefer to make it as original as possible. I'd say the felt is slightly different colour, but we particularly like this kind of maroon coloured felt. The strings are made by EKA, I think. If you're in the trade, you'll have heard of them, and 10 years ago it's one of our favourite suppliers. We still do use EKA, who are local to Oxford, and the soundboard's been shimmed, as you can see there. So we've done all that we would do nowadays, exactly the same kind of restoration. Now looking at the action, we can see that the piano's been very little used since we sold it. You can just see the string marks just about on the hammers. It needs voicing a bit, and it needs a bit of regulation, and also it hasn't been used for a while, and it tends to tighten up. Steinways particularly, if they're not free, they will tend to stick because the up weight is low. I'll try and explain that a bit more later on, but very often with Steinways you find the up weight's low, and therefore it needs, basically it means it's not, when it's the hammer pushing it back, it needs to be very free. I've marked a couple of these for a reason. You can see here, if I lift up here, actually let's try these, try right up to here, and if I let them go, those two are not falling down so fast. So they're slightly stiffer, and therefore the note will tend to feel slightly heavier and may stick. We had a case in the USA when I was working with my son recently, a Steinway Grand that we had to replace all the pins here. We don't have to replace the pins on this one. It's just slightly stiff, so I'll try and show you what we do there. Now if we do a swing test here, we just see that the hinge is a bit on the tight side, so if I let it go, it's not swinging enough. Now most people will say between about 3.5 and 7 maximum swings. We've got very little swing on that one. So what you can do if you haven't got a lubricant is just go like this, and if you move it slightly, put a bit of pressure from side to side and do it for long enough and faster, you might get a bit more heat on it, and then it will gradually free off. We'll see how we get on with that, but it's a long process. It is actually a good way of doing it. You may have to replace the pin if it's too tight, but in this case it's not that tight. So I've been moving it backwards and forwards for about 3 minutes, and we've now got more swings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's sufficient, and it won't feel sticky anymore. And another test is that it should almost go down when you're pushing it with your finger. Now that's if you haven't got access to any lubricant. It's obviously a long process. I did mention that in the USA we had to change all these pins because somebody had, I think, possibly used an oil-based lubricant here. And you can see here that lubricant has been used before, but we would have used Protec, which is a standard piano lubricant. In this in this particular case, my technicians gave me this bottle, which is rather used. I think we must have got that from an old piano technician, an old piano technician's kit, and maybe. You can use a syringe. I normally would either use a syringe or certainly not one like this, but it's perfectly good. You don't want to put very much on. If we just put a bit of lubricant on here, we're going to finish it off with this, and a bit of lubricant perhaps here, just in the middle, and then on there. It's going to be quicker than working it backwards and forwards, but if you don't use oil-based lubricant, because it will gum it up in the end. And now let's watch the swings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, nearly 7, which is maximum, and it nearly goes down on its own. So it's a very, very common problem with Steinways, this, and other pianos too, but particularly Steinways have a low up weight, which means you need these to be very freed off to get them to go down. So now if we test it, we're going to see, hopefully it'll go down the same as the others, almost to vertical, and then, yeah, drops down. I don't know why I've marked number 4, I'll have to look into that later on. If you take the hammers off, by the way, you've got to make sure they get back in exactly the right place so they hit the string at the same point, especially more so in the middle here, where they must hit all 3 strings as they did before, otherwise you're going to find the hammer sounds different as a different part of the hammer hits the string. But looking at the assessment sheet, the main work that needed to be done was to free off the hammer hinges, and we need to fine voice the hammers as well. Just looking here at middle C, note 40, when it was first measured at 52, we've now freed off the hinges and it's come down to 48. That's the down weight, and then the up weight is 22. Let me explain what that is. So the down weight is the weight placed on the key that will cause it to go down. So here we have 48 grams. And it's just about to go down. I might like to encourage it by a tap on underneath it, and that's the down weight. So that's 48 grams down weight. So to find the up weight, we take weights off, and we'll take this 16 gram off, and it's still not going up. That's 32 grams. If this was a digital keyboard, it almost definitely would go up, and some digital keyboards are even heavier up weight. The low down weight makes it feel very pleasant because it doesn't resist your fingers. Now this is 16 grams, if I place that on it, it's definitely coming up, so it's higher than 16, so we need to put more weight on to see what the up weight is. So now adding more weights, we found that the up weight is about 22, so 22 grams will cause it to come up. Now, it's only coming up partially, but it's difficult to sort of determine. If you measure up weight and down weight and you're in the trade, please do let us know what you do, we'd love to learn. So that's approximately the up weight is 22, perhaps 20 to 22, which is very low up weight, very pleasant up weight. It feels good to the fingers. So we're trying to keep the up weight low, but then we need to make sure the hammers are very free, and the rest of the action too. It may be that the centre, the balance rail needs lubricating too. We've mentioned that before. Here's a comparison of the tone with some other pianos. Here's a 2-meter Bechstein made in 1899. And the new Fouric 179. So that's the Steinway Grand model, old Model A, 185 centimetres long, made in 1889. Come back into stock, and it's almost identical to when it was first sold. Pianos don't really depreciate unless they're played a huge amount, or maybe the case is very badly faded. In this case, the top of the case is faded, and I do feel that does devalue the piano a bit. But if you bought the piano and kept it in a light place, this is no sun coming in here, but it's quite light window it's next to, and that will cause it to fade in gradually. It's surprising how quick it will fade in, actually, or rather it will equalize itself, as it were, and you'll see the color the same throughout. But it's just 10 years that it's been, or roughly 10 years it's been in the same place, I think, and so you see the fade line on the top. If you do have a piano and it's repolished, or just any wood colored piano, do vary how you keep the lid, and also the music desk, and also the fall here. That's also slightly darker than the rest of the piano, so closing the fall is a good idea too. Beautiful piano, we're really encouraged by it. It just needed some finishing touches, really. If you're interested in the piano, please do let us know. Please write to info@robertspianos.com. Very sensitive action, so you can play it loud, you can play it soft. If we can voice the hammers to taste, it's perhaps slightly brighter than you'd normally expect it to be. New hammers, they can be certainly voiced down with no problem at all. But if you like a very punchy sound and still get a gentle sound, so I think you'd have to discuss that with us. If you aren't able to come and see the piano, then we'll try and get the tone that you appreciate. Thank you very much for listening.
you.